Hello everyone, welcome to this channel, Monty Literature, where we are looking at English literature for SPM 2206. So today, we are going to look at how to write your essays in the exam. So I got some requests to teach how to answer questions. So today we are going to learn how to answer questions, and I'm going to teach you the Peel formula for poetry. So stay tuned and let's see what that's all about. Today we are going to use this question based on the poem To Autumn by John Keats for our video discussion. Before we get into discussing the poem and the question, let's first run through again what do you need to know and study to prepare for the exams with regards to the poems. The first obviously is that you need to understand the meaning of the poem, all of it. You need to know the themes and the ideas. You need to have developed your own response and opinion. So don't wait until the exam to ask yourself, oh, what do I think about this? You should be ready to go because you don't have much time in the exam. So you should have developed your own responses and opinions and gotten practice writing about them so that you're ready when it's time to write in the exams. And of course, importantly, you really need to be very familiar with language and literary devices such as imagery, structure, personification, and not just to be able to identify these devices, but to understand how they work to create meaning, and also how they work to create a certain response in the reader. You do not need to memorize the poems because they will be printed out for you, but you should be very familiar with them already, and it should be at your fingertips. Okay, next, what do examiners want you to show in an essay? Here is where we go to the assessment objectives, which you can find inside the official format pentaksiran document, which I'll put in the description box below. Here are the 4 assessment objectives. Okay, so let's just break it down a little bit. The first assessment objective: show in-depth knowledge of literary text supported by textual evidence. So you need to have quotes. Okay, that's really important. And you need to know your text. And not only do you need to know your text, AO2 says to explore text beyond surface meanings to reflect a deeper awareness of content. So basically you need to know your text and also understand the text on a deeper level. All right. AO3, analyze and evaluate ways in which language and literary devices are used in the text. I've already talked about that above. And AO4, communicate an informed, personal and critical response to the literary text. So to kind of summarize, what are the main things the examiners are looking for? Firstly, that you know and understand the text. You need to have quotes, evidence. Secondly, okay. Thirdly, you need to have language and literary devices. You need to show that you understand how these devices work and what they are. Your personal response, and on the whole, also good writing, because these are written exams. You have to write essays, so you need to present your ideas well in a way where everything makes sense. All right. And what is the format of the paper? So poetry falls into bahagian C, puisi, where it says jawab satu dari dua set soalan. So when it says set, the set is 2 questions. All right. So there are 2 sets here. And you can choose either the first set, which has an A and a B question, or you can choose the second set, which has an A and a B question. So you have to write 2 essays. Each essay is worth 15 marks, totaling 30 marks, and you have 40 minutes to write, meaning that you have about 20 minutes per essay. All right, so don't write 4 essays, just choose 1 set. Okay, but also you can't choose the A of this one and the B of this one. It doesn't work that way. You have to choose 2 from the same set. Okay, so let's get to our question. If you are not familiar with this poem, pause the video now, go and read up on this poem, study your poem and get familiar with it. and then come back and let's see how we're going to approach this question. Okay, so for any question, the first step that you have to take is, of course, to read the question and understand it. So let's look at the question together. Here is what it says. Explore how the poet creates a warm and lazy atmosphere in the poem above. What are the key words here? The key words would be warm, lazy, atmosphere. Okay, so the first step is to really understand the question and what it's saying, and it wants us to explore how, what are the methods that are used. Okay, so the second step is to plan out your points. So you have to plan out your points before you start writing your essay. So let me look at this poem. It's quite a long poem. There are 3 stanzas. So here, 1, 2, and 3. So this poem is actually quite a simple poem. It is a description of autumn, all the beautiful sights and scenes and smells, and there's actually so much that you could write about, all the different literary devices that are used here. I think we definitely cannot leave out imagery. And even though there's so much to choose from in these 3 stanzas, I am going to go ahead and write 1 point based on each stanza so that the examiner knows that I have understood the entire poem and I'm not leaving anything out. So for my first point, imagery, based on the first stanza, there are lots of different images that you could choose here, and of course there's no one way to write an essay. I'm just showing you one possible way of writing it. But for this first stanza, I want to focus on the imagery of ripe fruits. So I'm looking at these words like fruits, ripeness, swell, plump. These ideas of ripe fruits, which just makes it feel very relaxing because there's so much to choose from. There's so much to eat, you know, you don't have to do any work and everything is already there. There's an abundance of resources around. My second point, I want to pick something based on the second stanza, and in the second stanza, the biggest, most obvious literary device is personification. Specifically, the poet personifies autumn as a woman. And how does this relate back to a warm and lazy atmosphere? Look at what the woman is doing. She's sitting carelessly on the floor. She's sound asleep. So she's literally sleeping. It's very relaxing. So we get this personification of a sleeping woman sitting around. You know, her hair is lifted by the wind. It all seems very relaxing, like she's on a holiday. My third point, I want to pick something from the third stanza, and I want to focus specifically on this setting that we have of the soft dying day, i.e. sunset. It's the end of the day. The sky is really beautiful. There are these beautiful colors, and because it's the end of the day, it feels relaxing, right? Like you can unwind and let your hair down. We could call this imagery. This is indeed imagery, but I'll use the term setting because setting talks about the time and place. So let's use the term setting. Okay, so you can see here that I've already outlined my main points, and I have also circled some of the phrases that I would like to use. So let's get into how to write this essay. Okay, so how do we write our introduction? It can be quite short, but it has to do a few things. This is optional. You can start with a brief summary of the text in just 1 sentence. It's not compulsory at all, but sometimes it's really helpful because it helps for you to recap in your own mind what the poem is about, and it helps to set the focus as well. But don't spend too long on it. Here's what you need to do in your introduction. You need to make sure you mention the poem title and author. You need to state your answer to the question briefly, and you should also list all your points. So this is not necessarily compulsory, but it contributes to a good, well-constructed essay. It gives a good first impression to your examiner, and it makes it more likely that the examiner will notice and see all the points that you are going to present. So the introduction can just be 1 or 2 sentences. Let's look at how I've written it. And I just want to thank one of my students here who helped me with this sample essay. Okay, so here's my first sentence. To Autumn by John Keats is a poem which depicts the season of autumn to the reader as a season of harvest and beautiful sights. So what have I done here? I mentioned the poem title and the author. Check. I also chose to summarize the poem very briefly so that it helps to set the focus in my own mind. So I did that. It's not compulsory, but it's often very helpful for yourself. Let's go to my second sentence. The poet creates a warm and lazy atmosphere in the poem using imagery, personification, and setting to emphasize the delightfulness of autumn. What have I done here? Firstly, I've stated my answer to the question. The question said, how does a poet create a warm and lazy atmosphere? And the answer is, the poet creates a warm and lazy atmosphere by using la la la. So I have stated an answer to the question, and at the same time, I've also listed my 3 points using imagery, personification, and setting. So the examiner knows exactly what to look out for in the rest of my essay. Okay. Sometimes it can be quite hard to write your introduction. Sometimes students like to write the rest of the essay first, and then when they already have all their points, then they go back to the top and they write in their introduction. It's really up to you. Okay, so what is the Peel formula? The Peel formula is a formula that can help you write your body paragraphs and write out your points. So Peel stands for point, evidence, elaboration, and link. So first, the first sentence in your paragraph should be your point, your main point, and this sentence should answer the question. Okay? And then you go to E, which is evidence. Evidence is quotes from the text. And then you elaborate on the evidence. Elaboration can take many different forms. You could mention the literary devices and their effects. The effects of the evidence, perhaps. Or you can talk about your personal response. And finally, the L stands for link. This is optional, but I think it's a very good part of the formula because it is to make sure that you link back to the question. You know, when you've written your paragraph, you write this long paragraph with a lot of evidence sometimes, and then you reach the end of the paragraph and then you realize that you are off track. So you need to put in a sentence to make sure that you link it back to the question. This is optional. Let's take a look at how I have written my first body paragraph. Okay, so if you remember, my first point is about imagery of ripe fruits. So in my first body paragraph here, in my first stanza, I'm stating my point. I'm answering the question directly. In the first stanza, the poet uses imagery of ripe fruits to convey a warm and lazy atmosphere. You see, I have answered the question. This is my point. Here is my next sentence. This creates a feeling of abundance, and it gives the impression that everyone can just sit back, relax, and enjoy themselves. So I've chosen to write a little bit more about my point. This is a kind of elaboration on the point, and it's really up to you how you want to arrange it. I just felt that it worked better here. But in my next sentence, I bring in evidence, this mellow fruitfulness of fruits filled with ripeness to the core, which swell and plump up. So I've got lots of evidence here. And this brings to mind the end of the hard work of planting, as everyone can now enjoy the fruits of their labor. This is in fact an elaboration on the evidence. I just combined it all into one sentence. So you can see here that I have used the PEE formula to write my first body paragraph, and I did not include a link because I felt that it's fine on its own. Now, I want you to take a look at my second body paragraph, and I want you to pause the video and to read through the paragraph and see if you can identify where I have done my point, my evidence, my elaboration, and my link. Did I do it? You can use different colors to highlight and see whether I have used this peel formula for my next body paragraph. Okay, let's look at this together. So let's look at my first sentence. In addition, the poet's personification of autumn as a woman in the second stanza also contributes to this atmosphere. This is my point. It directly answers the question. We see the image of a woman being able to rest, enjoy herself, and be carefree instead of being busy at harvest. This is actually like an elaboration on the point, because I didn't manage to say everything that I wanted to say in my point sentence. For example, the poet depicts her sitting careless on the floor, not caring about anyone else. She is also shown sound asleep and is able to enjoy the beautiful aroma of the fume of poppies. Here is my evidence, 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 and a little bit of elaboration. See, just a little bit here, not caring about anyone else, beautiful aroma. And here I link it back to the question again. This contributes to the lazy atmosphere. In addition, the image of her hair soft lifted by the wind creates a sense of gentleness. So creating a sense of gentleness, this is a bit of an elaboration, which also relates to the warm and comfortable atmosphere. So in this paragraph, I've actually put a link at the end. It's not a separate sentence, it's all connected together, but you can see here that I have woven in evidence and elaboration. I started the paragraph with a point, so that's very clear, and I ended the paragraph with a link, which makes sure that I am still on track, I am still answering the question. Finally, we can see this again in my third stanza. You can pause the video now to read through it. Okay, let's look at it together. Finally, the poet uses the setting to create the atmosphere. Here is my point. The weather is literally warm, as seen in warm days and the maturing sun. This is my evidence. This is very comforting, especially as there is a hint that winter is coming next. That's my elaboration. The poem also focuses on the imagery of the sunset, marking the end of the day in the third stanza, the soft dying day with its rosy hue. That is my evidence. This symbolically hints at the end of the season, but it also contributes to the warm, lazy atmosphere, as it makes the reader feel that the day is ending and so it's time to rest and wind down. So here again, I have made sure that I have a link to the question. And just with a little bit of additional elaboration here. So I hope that you can see how the peel formula can help you to write. You write your point, your evidence, your elaboration, and your link. Over time, the more you write, the more natural it will be to combine into one sentence. You'll have a better sense of when to combine into one sentence and when to split up into a different sentence. But to start with, you can just write one sentence for point, evidence, elaboration, and link until you feel more comfortable with writing a continuous analysis. So that's it. We've got 3 body paragraphs, and now it's time for the conclusion. The conclusion can be very simple, just one sentence, and basically a conclusion is just to summarize all your points again. Here's what I've written for my conclusion. In conclusion, the poem makes the readers feel at ease by the choice of words that creates a relaxing atmosphere using imagery, personification, and setting. Also, this poem allows readers to deepen their appreciation towards nature, specifically the season of autumn. That's a little bit of personal response in there, but you can actually see that the personal response has been there throughout the whole essay. When we talk about how it's comforting, how it brings to mind certain images. So, yep, this is a very simple conclusion just to tie everything together and remind the examiner of what your main points were. Now that we have addressed how to use the PEEL formula to write your body paragraphs, and also we've covered how to write your introduction and your conclusion, here are some questions that I frequently get asked. How long must I write? There is no real fixed answer for this. My advice to you is to try and write 2 or 3 points, 2 or 3 body paragraphs in your essays. So start by doing essays and just trying to do your best at the essay until you get really good at it. Take as long as you need to. As you become more comfortable, give yourself less and less time, and in the end, see how much you can actually write in 20 minutes, and that will be your guide. Second question that you might be wondering is how many points should I write? Again, there is no fixed answer for this, but my suggestion is that you write 2 or 3 main points. And finally, is it compulsory to have an introduction and a conclusion? Like I said, it is part of good essay writing, and it will help to get your points across to the examiner. So it's a good idea to have an introduction and a conclusion if you can. I would say that if you really have no time in an exam, it's okay not to have one, but try to just write a 1-sentence introduction or a 1-sentence conclusion just to open your essay and pull it all together, and I think that will help to make a good impression on the examiner. But if you don't have time, don't stress out about it too much. Like I said, do your best to write a really good essay for your homework assignments, and in the exam, just do your best with the time that you have. Here is the full essay. We've got an introduction, a conclusion, and 3 body paragraphs. Some students might choose to write 2 longer body paragraphs instead of these 3 short body paragraphs. It's really up to you, and I hope that this sample essay is helpful. So over to you. It's your turn to start essay writing. Write, practice, get feedback, correct yourself, and I'm sure that over time you will get better and more confident at writing these essays. You can check out my other video on daffodils where there are a few sample questions that you might want to try. Don't worry if you feel like the meme here when you have to write an essay but you don't know where to start. I hope that this video helps you have a start and that with feedback from your teacher, you'll be able to improve. If you liked this video, do leave a comment. I love to hear from you, and I love to know who are watching my videos and what other kinds of videos you would like to see. Stay safe, everybody. Take care, and I will see you next time.